dissuade you from bringing forward this data?
No.
Okay. Secondly, I think this question is for Professor Wortley. Are there any plans to sort of look at the element of anti-Black racism and its sort of intermingling with perhaps religious discrimination, looking for example at how police might react to members of a visibly Black and Muslim community in respect of their use of force?
I can start and then, yeah. You know, we're reliant on the SIU director reports to understand the nature of the identity of people, and so to that extent, often race wasn't even recorded, let alone other intersectional identities. So there are inherent limitations in the data itself, and we do plan to look at intersectional analysis, but you know, whether we will be able to get at race and religion is really dependent on how those SIU director reports describe the individual in question.
Hi, this is for Scott. I'm just looking at the response from the police board and the service, and it seems to be on the defensive side, Sam, unfortunately. They say some may raise questions about the approach, methodology, and statistical basis of this report, and then they go on to talk about that. And then later, and I remember during Fantino's time, they just said junk science, so it's nicely put now. But and then later on, they talk about the fact, or they say that we all have to remember that the police come in after all sorts of other systems have failed, poverty, underserved neighborhoods, etc., and so they're responding to crisis. And I just wondered if further research is going to address that a little bit.
Could I just start? You know, I think it's really important to remember that this is information, the SIU information is information that the police themselves have the capacity to obtain and analyze. So to the extent that they don't accept the findings of our analysis, I would expect them to come with information of their own analysis to disrupt our findings. And to date, we have not seen the police be willing or to compile this kind of information and release it in a public way. And I think it is absolutely necessary for them to do that if they want to disrupt the findings of our report.
I was just wondering if you could summarize for me what data you have not yet been able to obtain from the various bodies.
So I think we would say that we have generally gotten cooperation from the Toronto Police Service, the SIU, and the board. The TPS has taken the position that they do not need to compile information in unique ways for us, and so what that means is they haven't produced unique civilian or incident identifiers unless they already existed in the carding or street check data. They have not linked use of force reports to general occurrence reports so that we can understand the nature of the force being used in the context of a specific interaction. And they have not produced free text fields from carding or street check data because they take the position that it would require extensive vetting. So there are a few areas where they have taken the position that they are not required to compile or create unique data sets. And that is really all that is outstanding at this point. Yep, at the back.
How do you explain the reluctance of the Toronto Police Service and the board to collect all the data you'd like to see?
I don't want to, you know, that's I think a question best asked to them. What we know is that over the past 30 years, starting with the Claire Lewis report, they have been asked to collect race-based data. When presented with the data, whether through the Toronto Stars analysis or this analysis, it consistently shows racial disparities. And it's unclear to me why they continue to be reluctant to provide data that would inform this conversation about the extent of racial discrimination and racial profiling, but also to start to move forward to tackle it. Yes? No.
Thank Thank you. My name is Miguel Avila, and I'm a social justice activist in Regent Park. I also played the role of a cat watch at the Toronto Police Services Board for the last 10 years. In order for the community to do something to reinforce this report, I think we need to address one important matter, is governance at the board. The composition of the board is mainly directed by the province. They figure pointed who is going to sit at that board. And then now with the reduction of councillors, I think they want to keep less councillors' voices at the table. I think we need to have more voices from the community, especially members of the disability communities who are really targeted by the Toronto Police, and voices from the youth as well. So that's one of my recommendations I would like to make. If you can do it, when you get a response from the police board, which Anna said, they're going to be on the defensive. They're going to deny, throw it, back to you for another opinion. I have a feeling this is going to lead into another subcommittee, perhaps led by Mr. Murkaji, former police board chairman, maybe, I don't know. Maybe by Anna, I don't know. But we want to see changes at the police governance because that's the only way to change the culture at the police services board. Thank you.
Thanks.
Wow,
Wow.
looking in a bad direction.
Are there any questions from media before we end the press conference?
I'm just curious to know if any of the data that you've analyzed points towards the fact that, or if there's any indication that racial profiling from Toronto Police has actually gotten worse over the years. Is there anything that would point to that being true at all?
At this point, what we can show is that the disparities in serious injury and death cases have remained stable in two time periods, the sort of early 2000s to 2013 to 2017. We don't have evidence at this point that they have gotten worse, but of course we will be analyzing additional data, and that may show different trends depending on different kind of levels of use of force or carding or other kinds of interactions.
I'd also like to ask Sam, it's been some time now since carding has ended. So I'm curious, in your experience with the kids that you work with in your community, as to whether or not that's exactly rang true. Are there still experiences that kids in the neighborhood that you work in, are kids still having experiences with carding? Are they still having those sorts of run-ins with police? And if so, what are you hearing from kids in that community?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all have an understanding that while certain policies and practices might be declared to have ended, I think that reality that I spoke of remains the same, right? Before carding and after carding, now they just don't get the receipt maybe. But that acts like police accessing Black youth in my community is an everyday occurrence, and that has not changed, right? So I think that, and I just wanted to emphasize that there are parts in the city where that's not the case. So something else is entirely possible, and it's actually occurring right now. So that police presence in the community, like mine and others, is the same.
One question for you as well, because there has been a call from certain areas that because carding has shifted, I think it still is happening, just in a different format perhaps. But there are calls saying that this is why there have been more shootings, this is why crime has gone up. What would your response be to that?
I think.
Well, first of all, I think it's really important that there is no evidence to suggest that carding is effective in terms of reducing homicide rates. So what we know is in 2007, at the height of carding, that we had a higher homicide rate than in 2015, for example, when carding ended. And so it's simply, there's really no evidence to suggest that carding is somehow linked to more effective police practices. In fact, what we know is that carding has caused a lot of distrust within communities, which makes them less likely to cooperate with police or provide proactive intelligence. And so Finally, I would say, we looked at the arrest data for the last year, and, the police are on track to make as many arrests as they have made in previous years without carding. And so, I think if we're going to raise bringing it back carding, for example, as a response to gun violence, we would need a lot more evidence to suggest that it's at all effective. And in any event, racial discrimination is prohibited under the code, and so effectiveness is only really one aspect of the issue.
That's voodoo statistic done by the police themselves.
I just have a quick question. I think the same people that would make the comment about the carding would also ask if there's any statistics that you could relate to, 9% of the population are made up by black people. They're going to ask how many black people were found to be committing violent offenses, how many black people were part of gangs that were part of these fatal shootings involving police. Was that data compared?
Well, first of all, Canada doesn't collect and disaggregate by race crime statistics, so that is not available. What we know from the data that we have produced is that regardless of race, in the incidents that we analyzed, most people were unarmed at the time of their encounter, and that overall white people actually were more likely to have a weapon during their encounter with the Toronto Police Service.
Okay, so I think we'll do one last and then we'll...
Right here?
Yep.
He needs a mic.
This one doesn't might not work, but try it.
Yeah, they say they're removing carding, but now with the legalization of marijuana, I can see where our black youths gonna be in more trouble, because I see this as a money-making thing right now for the system, because I know the black youths, they smoke like everybody else, but they're the ones who are gonna be in more trouble right now. Is there anything in place to protect all these young people who are gonna be charged though and get a criminal record?
So one thing that we are going to do in the inquiry final report is look at certain charges and arrests, and one of the things we will be analyzing is drug possession, simple possession charges, and whether there are disparities in charging for simple possession between black and white people, and hopefully we can also disaggregate based on age.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Media, if you have any scrum